Why, hello, everybody. So, welcome to episode 6 of the CMA panel, the Americas edition. And I have to say the Americas edition because Christian from Europe has the EMEA one already up and running. And I think he's catching us on the episode number. I think they do one every week or a couple weeks. Ours is once a month. So, my name again is Chris Shu, and we have Josh Sutton with us and Abhishek. Sorry, Abhishek. Let me look up. Please help me pronounce this correctly. I really don't want to say that incorrectly. Sirvastava? Vastava?
Srivastava, you are close.
Shivastava? Oh,
Yeah,
close. Okay. Well,
close.
I promise to get it wrong again, but please feel free to correct me every single time. I will do my best.
Definitely, I will do
Yeah.
that.
As Shu is another one too that's a tough one on my side that we're going. So, okay. So we're here talking about our or not event management. I'm sorry, that's a previous meeting. We're here talking about human resources service delivery. And as we go through this, anybody in the chat, feel free to join in, post a question in the chat, and we'll make sure that we start answering it. But before we start talking HRSD, I'd like to just go through and do a bit of an introduction. So Abhishek, go ahead and introduce yourself if you don't
Thank
mind.
you. Abhishek Srivastava. I lead the ServiceNow practice at Genpact, and I am, apart from being a ServiceNow certified master architect, I am also a certified technical architect based out of South Windsor, Connecticut. I've recently joined Genpact. It's quite 2 3 months before I joined, but I am not new to the ServiceNow ecosystem. Um, I joke around sometimes. I keep on saying I've been implementing ServiceNow since I was a child. I mean, it was early to 2010. I started on ServiceNow, and by this time, I can safely say I've done 60 to 70 ServiceNow implementations, of which HRSD happens to be around 10 implementations on HR. I happen to be certified in the HRSD stream. And also, I have been working with a lot of customers on road mapping on the HR product. So happy to answer your questions, and feel free to put them in the chat. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, and we have a newly minted CMA as of what, last week or a week ago?
Last
So
Wednesday, we got the
last
announcement.
Wednesday, the announcements went out. Josh Sutton. So thanks so much for joining us. This is his first podcast as the newly minted CMA. So go ahead and give us a bit of an introduction, please.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate the opportunity to be here as well. Yeah, as Chris said, I just obtained my CMA. Prior to that, last year, I went, well, it actually would be the year before, I got my CTA. So just like Abhishek, it's kind of the package deal, right? But I've been implementing not as long as Abhishek, but 2014, so Eureka, pre awesome UI. It was the old kind of wireframe type UI. But I was a customer actually when I first started, and then moved into being a services partner, and now I've worked for ServiceNow for over 2 years now. And as a platform architect is where I started, kind of helping to get the value. Customers get the value out of what they're actually spending on. And now I'm a success manager, product success manager with SPM. Don't let that fool you, though. I do have the HRSD experience, primarily in helping in that realizing the value or re-platforming, sort of kind of a design review with recommendations. I did a large one right before I left being a platform architect, and it was really cool. We got a lot of good things to understand where people are struggling, right? Because it's not just plug and play. That does take a little bit of work. So I'm happy to be here to answer any questions and potentially learn some as well. That's the one thing with CMA, you're always learning. So I'm not afraid to admit that.
Excellent. Okay, and Rob Greeley. We saw you on camera for a little bit.
Okay.
See if we
Yeah.
can get that going. But while you're doing the camera, there we are. Yeah, and you got the
That's the wrong
background going.
camera, but that'll work. Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, it works. So Rob Greeley works for Jolt Energy, and you're COO, I believe.
Yeah, operations. So
Yeah, that's
back
right.
and forth. I've been in these discussions, and I tend to always play the same role, which is, hey, let's how do I represent the end user? So or the customer of the ServiceNow product. Again, Rob Greeley, I've been with the ServiceNow environment for about 10 years, but almost always representing the customer. So I've been on the customer side, both negotiating agreements with ServiceNow to provide the software, the licensing, and then working directly with partners like the other people who are here to do the implementations. And so I can kind of bring
Nice.
a bit of a customer point of view.
Excellent. Yes. So yeah, we can kind of talk a bit about the CMA journey. So Rob and I were in the same cohort. Abhishek, I think you were before us,
No,
weren't you?
I was in 2023.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, AMS. Oh, yeah, we were in the same one. I'm sorry.
AMS.
I'm at the end of like 60 hours so far this week. My brain is kind of going to mush a bit. Anyway, so yeah, we all went through the same cohort. You're right. Josh is the new kid on the block, along with some of the other ones. So let's dive into some of the HRSD stuff. So right now, I'm kind of working with one customer who has got a unique challenge in that they've got very specific geographical based processes for HRSD implementations, not so much on the compliance or the data privacy side of things, but just that in one country, you follow this process, and in a separate country, you follow similar, like 70% of it follows this one, and then it's got these exceptions. How do you guys manage those process exceptions when they're driven by some sort of data point, like a geographical location?
Yeah. And Chris, I'll just jump in and say that is far from abnormal, right?
Yeah. Okay,
Just
thanks.
on onboarding processes, for example, right? The HR systems for every country are different. If you get to do a big enterprise, even down to the point where within you'll have some countries leasing laptops, some buying laptops, so some reassign laptops, some always start with new. So just the policies are different. For if I just look at onboarding as a whole.
Okay.
The payroll systems are different. Yeah. So geography, when you get into a big enterprise, geography differences are just normal. They're to be expected.
Appreciate the correction on that. Thank you.
No, it's not correction, just emphasis.
Yeah, it is. I totally said something that was unique, and that we want to make sure that we're upfront on stuff like that,
Absolutely.
right? So no problem. I'm wrong regularly, but I always do the best to make it right. So, okay, so how do you handle the common situation then, where you have a data point like geography drive partial process similarities and sometimes unique and the exception cases?
For me,
Josh.
what I've seen in my experience is the routing of, right, making sure that the things that need to happen are getting to the right people that can actually do it, right? So when we're speaking technology, it's all about the routing rules, right? You have qualifiers of geo and things like that. The other thing that I've noticed too in some circumstances is they are actually completely different services. They may look and feel like the same, but because of that stark difference in the process, it's completely different service. So we can't really qualify it as the same service with just different routing or different completion. It really is a separate service.
Yep.
So you would see that as a separate piece in the CSDM structure then? So you might have like a big parent onboarding, and then underneath regionally based onboarding business applications or business services?
Yep.
Yeah, I'd say it's more of the HR service
Yeah.
than the common services data model. Relating to, but from specifically the HR service is you have your topic detail, your topic category, and things like that. But the service is the actual execution, and that's where it would vary, right? We would have multiple of the same services underneath that topic umbrella. Abhishek, would you elaborate on that at all, or you kind of?
Yeah, no, I would definitely want to mention that, when doing a multi geography implementation for any HRSD implementation, the processes which are existing in different geographies are causing most of the pain. And on top of that, if you are doing a transformation project for a customer, it even adds to the complexity. So how I had handled in the past is, along with, of course, the automated work assignment rules and all those things, I brought in a flavor of GBS. Because global business services, it goes into, cutting across the technology. So I have solved it with the help of GBS and AWA. Um, Most of the time, you have various people who are in different geographies, so they will also want to um, see the text in their own language. So the dynamic translation part of it,
Yeah.
and then the payroll system, that is again different. I've also seen geographies. One of my customer, they were using Workday in America,
Mhm.
but and they were based out of Russia as well. So they were using another Workday instance in the Russian region, and I found it really hard to integrate ServiceNow with Workday. So then, because ServiceNow doesn't operate in that region, ServiceNow doesn't have data centers in that region. So then I had to contact a third party with which I used to work with, and establish those connections. So, but coming back to the point, the multi-geography thing with various processes, uh, uh, I stuck out of the box, explained all the processes to the customers. Um, a lot of times, what I've done is reimagined the process with the customers. Instead of bringing their
Mhm.
processes into ServiceNow, kind of had an open dialogue with them. Hey, this is how ServiceNow, the services look like. This is how it is, and then show them the GBS flavor of it. And combined with that, bring in the universal request, which will again, do everything. Just raise a ticket. Your the user experience is not going anywhere. The just raise a ticket and it will get routed. So
Yeah.
those were some of the things I had taken into account when implementing for a multi-geography customer.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've got our first question. So,
Mhm.
did we want to wrap up on anything that Abhishek said and then
Yeah,
address
just
the question? Go
I
ahead.
wanted to highlight and appreciate that when you talked about the process, right? Because a lot of customers have that this is how we do it, so this is how we need to, complement that with the system that we're doing it in, and it's a huge opportunity to take a step back and look at your overall processes. Is there a way we can streamline this, right? Is there a way we can have some sort of parity? Now, when you're talking geographical locations, there are some hard and fast rules you just can't, cut out, but it is a huge opportunity to reimagine how you're actually doing things, and simplify it, right? So I always say start with the process first, because implementing bad processes with a tool is not going to solve your problems, right?
Right. It comes back to what we've talked about in some of these previous sessions. Is when you hit something like this, it's governance. The biggest risk to these projects is if you're implementing it at a lower level and you don't have the buy-in from the senior managers. So you have a bunch of lower level executives who are all saying, and my process must be like this.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's when it gets complicated. I mean, the one that gave us fits in a previous example, again, before we jump on here, was each organization defined their individual onboarding and offboarding processes. But it turned out that what was really causing the most problems was transfers, especially executive transfers from one country to another, which is both an onboarding and an offboarding simultaneously using two different
Yep.
processes. And those tend to be the most visible because it's your most senior executives that are getting transferred. And so it's just an example. You really have to have that consolidate, that discussion at the top level, that engagement at the top level of rebuilding your processes.
And then basically setting the tone for everybody within the company,
Yeah.
I would assume, to have that buy-in. I know sometimes I can't get the buy-in of everybody, but if I can get the buy-in of the people that decide and set that tone, then it does help at least push things forward, even if not everybody's on board. Okay, so we've got our question from Azim Nazir. So good to see you again, Nazim. Thanks for joining. He had asked, how do you solve data privacy issues between HRSD to ITSM? So we just put it up in the chat here, so you'll be able to see it. And now, okay, we'll hide it over, and whoever wants to take a stab at this one. So the data privacy issues between HRSD and ITSM.
Uh, I can go first. So the data privacy issues are mostly, ServiceNow has already taken care of it when they have a separate table for the contacts in HRSD, and you have a user table in the global, which is used for your ITSM. So most of your HR details, which it is going to be in the HR profile table. So one of the data privacy issue is solved there. Now there are various ACLs and all those things, and there are some new deny ACLs which are there, has been introduced for Xanadu, that can help you with that again. Um, but mostly, I would say that HRSD is a self-scoped application, which it has a separate scope, which it is already different from ITSM. So I think if you want, I mean, Azim, if you want to be more specific, like what are those kind of issues, that would help us better, you know.
Sure. Let me throw in a bit of maybe an example to go
Yeah,
back to our onboarding one, but then on the flip side of that is offboarding, which may cross multiple teams both in and out of HR. So an offboarding process could include, your benefits, your payroll, all the HR stuff, which is already, like you said, locked down by the app, but somebody has to come pick that laptop up and reclaim that software. So how would you manage the data privacy approach so that if somebody, say, is offboarded without their knowledge, how do you, because you don't want somebody showing up saying, hey, I'm from IT, I'm here to get your laptop because today's your last day. So how would you guys address that type of scenario?
I think it's the life cycle, right? Because each life cycle stage may be in different persona, I would say, from the worker perspective, right? So your HR, even within HR, and this is a good point to make, my benefits may not be able to, if they are not the same team as the payroll team, there's stark separation between that as well. So even within HRSD, there's that kind of linear separation or privacy separation, just based on what your responsibilities are. So that extends then to that the ability of, I can have additional areas like ITSM or ITAM or the like that has tasks that need to complete this offboarding life cycle, but the transparency is only from the kind of the ones owning it, right? Whereas I may be able to see where things are at with the actual steps of the life cycle of offboarding, but I'm not going to be able to see the details of their benefits or their payroll and things like that, right? And then one more clarification: even admin layer has a separation. So
right.
your ITSM admin or your global admin does not have insight into the HRSD, and we can extend that to other scoped apps as well, but HRSD particularly, unless they have the HR admin role. So even at that level, we're significantly separating the data privacy, if you will, but really the responsibilities.
Yes, that's right. That's like the last thing that you do is hand the keys over I like to say, right? So, now we're locking the system admin account or the admin role out, and now anybody HR admin manages this and owns it moving forward, including that ongoing maintenance and that enhancement piece. So if there's a defect or an enhancement that's needed, suddenly your system admin can't go in and make those changes without getting the role back. And then there is a way to do it, but it does have a bit of administration effort to it. Would you guys recommend maybe having almost like an ITSM center of excellence in HRSD to go collect the laptop without having, say, an ITSM or service catalog item submitted or something like that? Because I think what we're trying to look at is how do we lock out ITIL completely? And I can't see a way to lock out ITIL completely if you're in an ITIL role table.
Right.
Okay. How do you all feel about COEs and centers of excellence is what we're talking about here, because these also put up the pillars. Like you said, Josh, we've got, benefits, payroll. I like to use the example of if there's a complaint, because the complaints are usually the ones that are locked down the most, because I can be locked out of a complaint against me if I'm in the complaint department. So let's say I field complaints in HR and someone submits one about me, then I shouldn't be able to see that. It should have to be routed to somebody else. So that kind of has like the most filtered capabilities within the COE. So do you think that it's better to have generic COEs, very specific ones? How do you deal with scalability?
So I was in this situation when I was doing an implementation for a customer and for their ER/LR entities. So they had the similar kind of thing. Okay, my one COE should not be able to see the contents of the different COE. And I think ServiceNow has a nice thing which is called as the COE security, where you can lock down the COEs. So if you are in the payroll and I'm in ERLR, no one would be able to see the ERLR unless the security configuration is done properly to the users it is given, and then similarly for different things. So this is one of the way we could do that, and then we could bring out our ACLs as well whenever we don't want to lock down more access.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
that's
kind of
great.
hanging on
Go
the
ahead, Josh.
the employee relations portion
Yeah.
right there. That actually was something newly implemented as its own standalone COE within the last couple of years, right, Abhishek?
Yeah, that's
Because it is such a private thing. And then they have, Chris, I love that you kind of elaborate on that, because if I'm an employee that is logging an employee relations conflict with my manager, well, typically your manager sees everything that your employee can see. Well, that area is very, very specifically locked down to be interactive to the point of, the logger. I won't call it the requester because I'm not requesting an employee relations thing, right? But the person who submitted it, to really look at, okay, what is it and who is it being submitted against? And yeah, I love that. Just the thought behind it. You can tell the product was truly designed with input from real employee relations people, because they have to ensure that those things are, there's lines you can't cross, right? Very explicitly.
That's very true. Let's flip over a bit to the client side of things. So, Rob, if we're kind of looking at a company that maybe tracks things through paper or through perhaps a legacy system, what kind of training expectations do you have from your ServiceNow implementer to help get your staff up and running on the new platform and making the most out of it from day one?
Yeah. Yeah, and I would start with interesting enough. What I find is when you move into a company like this, the first thing you have to do is kind of disavow them of the use of Excel. Right? What you'll find is that you move into a big company, there isn't a central process. Every group has their own process, but those processes aren't they're built into, and then I go to this Excel spreadsheet and I do the name or I track it here, right? and they're very used to those processes, and you really have to get just around that idea of we're going to have a central process and it's going to be in a system and you are going to use it and you're going to move over. It's not true with everything, but it really just is. You're wiping up large numbers of Excel spreadsheet based processes all at once.
Or mailboxes for me, but keep going.
Yes.
We all have the shared mailbox.
The shared mailboxes, exactly. Getting people out of shared mailboxes and into, and that's actually a different topic. The whole migration from shared mailboxes into ServiceNow is an interesting topic for later. But it is around, you've got this first kind of create the need. You've got to get them to understand where they're going. You've got to then move them onto the new process. And then you've got to get them actually to follow it. And I've found the train the trainer process works pretty well, but you've got to have advocates in each group that you're going to roll this out to all at once. You have to have advocates in there that are going to be ready to turn around and train their locals and are advocating for why. And then you have to have a massive communication. I'm talking again, big organizations. You have to have a massive communication that says, first, here's the new process that we're rolling to in 3 months. Here's the new process we're rolling to in a month. Here's the new process we're rolling into 5 days, 4 days, 3 days. Boom, push it out. And then you've got to have a hypercare process where you're running around and checking and you figure out how you're going to measure the process of cutting over.
And that process of adoption. Yeah, you're right. That's why that dedicated change lead, not to go back to the board exams, but that's why that dedicated change lead is so critical. This is not something that you just want to have a PM do off the side of their desk. Like, this dedicated change lead is in weekly meetings, socializing what's done, training out, putting out those fires on everything that's already live, telling everybody what's coming up and how to prepare for it, including, I've seen some of the best change leads I've seen. What they'll do is say, here's how you do it on the left screen, and this is how the existing process is. I go into Excel and then I send it from the shared mailbox and then I receive it and go on. Here's how we do it in ServiceNow, and walk them through like for like, step by step, including documenting it, recording the meeting for video review later if somebody wants to do that. And that really enables the adoption to be meaningful.
And again, with a big project, sometimes it's not just a change lead; it's a change team.
Yes, that's true.
You end up with a change lead, then you end up with documentation specialists who are writing the training, and then you end up with trainers who are doing the training of the trainers. And then you've got to project manage it like a work stream.
Definitely. Yeah. I want to get on some of those project budgets you've got where multiple people. What? Documenters? That's amazing. Okay. So I think, we've kind of covered the ITSM side of things. There's a few different approaches that you can follow. I guess let's just kind of move more into a general thing. Like, what kinds of foundational platform capabilities do you feel really need to be in line so that HRSD can be quickly adopted and implemented? Are we talking like foundational data? Are we talking some sort of foundational structure within the company? Like, you need to have an established org structure, obviously. Maybe like an effective Active Directory integration that maps everything out correctly in the org would be a nice start. So when you're doing these HRSD projects, do you guys find that you're going through and doing some of this foundational data cleanup as well?
Oh, yeah. So what I've seen when implementing various projects with the different customers, firstly, the processes need to be aligned nicely so that there is a process to get the foundation data. Then we need to figure out what the actual source of truth is, because I've had to deal with organizations who were maintaining employee data in one system. They were maintaining the contractor data in another homegrown system. And then they had a data lake, which is data breaks or something. And then there was all this conversation. Okay, should we do point-to-point integrations, or should we get the data into the data lake and then do the integrations? So again, if you want to make ServiceNow as the orchestration layer, kind of like, I'll give an example. If I want my a letter for my mortgage, from my employer. I need to raise a request or a case in ServiceNow. After approvals, it needs to do its thing in Workday and get the details to me. But now, if I am not doing it, if I am doing it with the data lake, the data lake just has data. So coming back to the point, we need to have proper processes in place so that the foundation can be established rightly. Now, I've seen at a lot of places the locations are not maintained in one uh, location. We have locations being there in the ITSM system. We also have locations on spreadsheets. The biggest part of and a lot of places I've seen is about legal entities. The legal entities never exist properly in one place. So first of all, you need to talk to those stakeholders, get everything in line, and then get those integrations to ServiceNow. So if we have our processes right, we know what is coming from there, then we can start with the laying out the foundation. And that has helped me a lot. So right now, I have dealt with so many customers who have this scattered data. Now, firstly, when I do an implementation of HRSD, I talk to, okay, tell me about your foundation data. Where does it live? Even before I start jumping into the instance, I want that.
Yeah.
So that is how I attack this integration. I mean, any HRSD implementation.
Obviously,
Yeah, that's great. Go ahead. Yeah,
I
go
was going
ahead,
to say,
Ron.
how would you approach a situation where a customer says, "No, we have no foundation, no master data. We have lots of master data. We have a system for contractors, field glass or something like that. We have a system for employees in each country. We have, but we need to get it all together into one place for the process. So, can ServiceNow be our center of our single source of data?"
Yeah, and I sometimes I do. I mean, most of the times I tell my customers that don't treat ServiceNow as your system of record. It should not be. It should always be integrated to your different sources of truth from where you can get the data, because it's a system of engagement. You are establishing an employee experience for your employees and users. So generally, I hate doing for foundation data specifically. I hate telling my customers that push all your data into a data lake and we will get it from there. I like doing point to point solutions, like for employers, do an integration with Workday. For contractors, if it is a different one, do it with that system, because it will help in, at the end of the day, it will help in orchestration. So that is how I want to do it. Versus when I'm doing any case data, like for retention purposes, some of the customers, when they are moving off of different platforms, they want their case data to be transferred. At that point, I am blunt on the face that we cannot do it in ServiceNow. You should not do it in ServiceNow. You should send that to a data lake. So I hope that answered,
Yeah. Yeah.
Rob.
Yeah, it definitely did. And I like that you always want to push ServiceNow into that system of engagement. I like to set it up as system of record first, paving the way for engagement, because that should always be the goal. But that speaks to a lot of the integration capabilities of ServiceNow. So with HR, though, your integrations themselves need to be protected and also have that transfer of data managed. So, how would you handle transferring sensitive information from an external system, bringing it into ServiceNow so that it can then be consumed and used in a process, in an HR process?
I'd say most integrations are using the appropriate secure transport, right? So OAuth is a huge thing, because that's encrypting the data between, not just where it lives or where it's going to. The communication layer is actually pretty well protected and encrypted in that as well, right? So, and to the point where most things, I will never say all, but most things with ServiceNow has that OAuth integration layer first and foremost, right? You literally have to look to see, and some systems will not allow a lower level of integration communication, right? So that's first and foremost. And then, I won't go deep into the subject, but you also have your abilities of, additional encryption and things like that. That is part of, the vault. I don't want to claim it, but you have those additional capabilities that you can do to ensure that it's encrypted where it's at and then where it's going as well.
So then when it lands in the platform, are you tying it to the HR admin role and making sure that it's locked down that way? I've come into some clients and, they're running their integrations from an HR system, transferring sensitive data, just throwing it in the global scope. And then, you have that, well, let me see what I can find.
Yeah.
And you pull up a list view and and then see, well, I've got an NDA, so don't worry. But you're going to want to address this. So does that mean that you're putting those into the one of the HR scopes and then tying that HR admin role to lock it down? Do you consider even de-scoping sensitive data from being pulled if possible? Like, how do you apply that value assessment?
I think it's putting it where it's supposed to be. That's simple as that. All right. I'll unpack it a little bit, but if I'm pulling in payroll information, or if I'm pulling in benefits, we're using those a lot because that's highly sensitive. Put it in the place where it's going to be consumed within ServiceNow to be actioned and things like that, right? That is the right way. Personally, that is the right way to do it, because you're not able to be circumvented at that point, right? It's literally going where it needs to be. I don't know if anybody else has a different opinion on that, but that's what
I like that. And that also is leveraging the baseline product capabilities and security functions. Yes, it is additional work, regression testing, because now I have to test, do the right roles have access and do the wrong roles get denied? So you're adding an extra other side to that regression testing. But it is always going to be worth it, in my opinion, to avoid that being in the headline for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. What's the cost of doing it the wrong way?
That's right. Yeah. Right. What's the impacts and the risk assessment? And, some clients I've gone through say, we see the risk, we acknowledge it, we sign off. Okay. But that's ultimately their choice, as long as we've done our due diligence in presenting to the client, that kind of thing. Robert, actually, that gives me a question for you then. So as a client, how would you weigh those types of things? Because sometimes the budget is what the budget is.
Yeah.
So what would you say in some scenarios where I'm already down way through the project, we've uncovered a security issue that either is an accepted risk or puts us over budget and we just don't have it?
I think it depends on your company, right? A lot of the experience I have has been in the financial industry. So flat out, nope, security trumps everything, including budget.
Yeah.
So
okay.
So
does that mean they cancel the project if they don't have it allocated, or do they just find the money? I mean, I know in financial,
I think that depends on how far you are into the project.
Okay. So they see how far we're down the road and value assess there.
Exactly. But or many times it's you go for the security stuff, but you're going to cut something else, like training, right?
Oh, you broke my heart there. Yes, because that's always, well, we could do documentation post go live,
right?
when
famous last words, right?
Right.
Oh, okay. So we're just not doing it. All right.
Right. Or along the lines of you'll just have to make the system user friendly enough that they don't need training.
Oh, right. Yeah, it should be intuitive enough,
right,
to do that.
And
we've heard them all.
Mm-hmm.
And
So,
regarding the security, we were talking about the security of the data from one system to the other, which is my primary reason I do not recommend any of my customers to make ServiceNow as the system of record. Don't get all your data in. only get what is needed. If if somebody reaches out to me that, oh, I have 100 fields in Workday, I need to get everything here, my first question would be, tell me a reason. Is there a process associated with this or not? And that eventually gets looped in my discovery sessions when I'm reimagining my processes. That, okay, these are the fields which are essentially required by this process. I will get only those. I will not get my social into ServiceNow if there is no need for that. So, and then a lot of security measures like we take. I have worked with a customer where we had a Kafka bus, enterprise messaging bus. So all the data which was coming to ServiceNow and going back and forth, we safeguarded it with the enterprise messaging bus, which was Kafka. And interestingly, ServiceNow also has something on Kafka. Josh, you are the latest graduate from the academy. You must know more of the automation engine and the Apache Kafka layer they are introducing. But I wish when I did this implementation, the Apache Kafka was there,
Yeah.
but it was not. So the customer had to procure a different instance of Kafka, and they had it was an enterprise thing at the customer that there was no point-to-point integration allowed. So that is again safeguarding the data when you are integrating two systems.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate what you kind of said about only getting the data you need. I've just gone through that exact experience with
Mhm.
an integration between ServiceNow and a third-party tool. I won't name it, but what we did was that run through every single data point that the source system had available, and then we picked out all the ones that we absolutely had to have. We had a nice to have and then a not needed bucket. Eventually, we scrapped all the nice to haves and only took the ones that we needed for the processes. That left us with like 4 or 5 columns. And then we restricted the integrations account to only be able to pull that. So even if I pull the employee record, all that was returned was what I needed. That solved all of our privacy concerns. That got us through the security assessment phase plus the design phase in a week. And then in 2 hours on a live session, I actually was able to build and stand up the integration. And then they have to build out the process afterwards. So there's still a lot more work to do, but actually being the connection and having the firewall team open it up, all of that was done in 2 hours. But that brings me to one other question about integrations. So when you're going through that journey, and we've pulled in just those one things, that one piece of data, how do you operationally maintain it effectively so that it can grow? What if I need to bring in another piece of data later on? Do you make a data driven solution or anything like that? Anybody? Yeah. That's a tough one, isn't it?
Well, maybe ask the question just a little bit differently.
So let's part of integrations is a large part of HRSD.
Right.
And where you're kind of getting into the same boat, but you're handing over some of the control of the paddling to that other system. So
Yep.
how do you manage the change in both sides that can happen, and then making sure that you're still both headed in the same direction? So let's say Workday really has a new release and something drastically changes. How do you manage how the updates you may need to make in the regression testing in ServiceNow to accommodate that integration, the external systems change that has just come in?
Gotcha. Well, for me, it starts with your technical governance and your operating model, right? We need to understand when we are integrating with these, what type of integration are we using? I mean, not to, call back to the CMA, but it's
I
pretty
know.
fresh. But you have your integration sequence, and if we're using things that are supported, right, by ServiceNow or by both systems, we understand that the changes that are being made should be communicated, right? So we should have a pretty good idea of what's happening there. Now, when you get into more of those custom integrations and things like that, that puts a lot back on both of the teams. And that's where I say if you have your Workday team and your ServiceNow team for HR in the same group, that's a blessing, right? Because you're constantly communicating on what's going where. If they're separate, they need to ensure that they are acting as one team, because we are doing things that could directly impact one system or the other. And just a kind of a side note on that, when you're looking at functionality and capability, that is another thing to consider when you're looking at Workday versus ServiceNow. Workday has a lot of capabilities that you can operate and do some of the things that maybe we are undertaking within ServiceNow. So would we do it in both systems? Would we have a virtual agent for both systems? The answer really is no, right? You decide what is going to be your entry point or your source of your employees. And then same thing with all of the activities that happen within Workday. If you're directing and your transformation is to promote ServiceNow as your entry point, build the things in Workday that can support the interaction that's happening within ServiceNow, rather than trying to build it in both locations. So I kind of elaborated on that a little bit, but hopefully that makes sense.
No, that's great. Do we have anything else to add?
Yeah.
Abhishek, I know you had a question to the group as well.
Yeah,
So if
but
you want to expand and then ask, go
I
ahead.
would just want to add for this. See, again, going back to the basics, stick out of the box. ServiceNow has already spent tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars working with the third party to establish this integration. So use the spoke. And if there is a change which is done in the third party application, uh, the change would be done in the spoke as well. And therefore, you will mitigate the risk of making manual changes. And then if there is no spoke, then I understand you'll have to go to the route of going to the store app and all those things. But I would definitely, and I encourage all my customers, and they understand the power of using out of the box applications to do their integrations. So yeah, just
That's great. And just want to call out that the spokes are sometimes updated as often as monthly, if not quarterly.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
even when you're doing these types of integrations and you're like, oh, well, the spoke doesn't have everything, or I'm worried that I have to wait till my next family upgrade. Nope. Let's say there's a critical piece, and I'm going through this right now with a client where there's a critical integration that's not supported in Xanadu. They're going to fast track it, release it in the store, and they'll tell us when it's done. And we'll be able to just download and install it that day that it's released. So those spokes are not tied to a monthly patch. They're not tied to a family release. They're really in control of the developer that's releasing it in the store, and they can release every single day if they get approved. Okay, so go ahead,
They're
Abhishek. You had a question for the. Oh,
They're
sure.
supportable.
That's true. Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
just wanted to throw that out, right?
Yeah. ServiceNow support will answer those cases. So, Abhishek, you had a question for
yeah.
the
So
panel. Go ahead.
I was in this interesting situation with one of my clients. We were doing a transformation with them, and they had an ITSM platform which was separate, and we were standing this new platform, ServiceNow platform, in which we were implementing HRSD and their S2P suite. Now, there was a situation where, see, my customer wanted a uniform experience for their users who are working as agents on the agent workspace, and the HRSD. If you guys have gone inside it, it has fulfillment instructions when you're working on a case on the agent workspace. Whereas the source to pay, it doesn't have that. Now, my customer came back to me, said, oh no, I want my users to have a uniform experience, and I cannot go ahead with S2P. Why don't you build a new COE in HRSD, and then we can do our source to pay operations in there? So, how do you guys handle these kind of situations or similar? You must have gone through this, that a customer would have wanted you to repurpose an application for another one for which there is a custom built application by ServiceNow. So, how do you handle that?
Yeah, and there's a lot of reasons for that too, and it's also an avoidance of licensing, right?
Yes.
No, no, I'm not going to go buy source to pay. I'm just going to go rebuild or legal or one of those. I'm just going to use ITSM, service catalog.
Yes, or ITSM service catalog for HRSD. Why can't you just extend all the tables and lock it down?
Yeah.
Well, we can. I need a team and I need 8 months, and you're going to need to commit to 2 months a year regression testing because every upgrade we're going to.
Right.
Yeah. So handling those situations really have me do a true value assessment. And then ultimately, I must respect the customer's choice at the end of that. Sometimes, like I said earlier, the budget is the budget, and sometimes you just don't have it. So then de-scoping kicks in, you're pulling stuff out. I worked with one customer that was a perfect candidate for HRSD. It just wasn't in the cards. So we de-scoped all sensitive data and built a scoped app that was very service catalog-y, but it delivers all that they need, and they accepted that they couldn't have anything sensitive in there and just work forward with it. But how do you guys handle that, Josh?
For me, it may be a little bit easier than others, but I've got pretty good lines to our product teams, both inbound and outbound, and it's ensuring that there's awareness. And I will just say this: software is built based on the known, right? And software also has a life cycle. There's a roadmap with it. There's only certain things that people can do in the day, just like every one of us. This may be on the roadmap, so we understanding if this, right, give the source to pay example, has that agent workspace area that has the fulfillment instructions and things like that. Is that something that is being planned? And if yes, do we have a timeline? Right, then you have that conversation with the customer. Hey, we're looking at, I have this conversation all the time, right? You're wanting to do this now. We're in a state of renovation. That renovation step is not happening until May. Are you able to wait? Do we need to find a workaround, or is this something that you need and it needs to be built? And then that's the decision of how is it going to be built? Like, how are we going to do this? 99.999% of the time, I always advocate for what I call bolt-on customization or configuration. Even I'm not changing anything embedded in the code that's existing, right? I need to bolt on a layer. That way, if something does change with the product and it is now native, just unbolt that, right? And now I can take advantage of. Obviously, there's migration steps potentially or certain things you need to do, but it gives you that ability to very easily adapt that portion that has been released that wasn't previously there. And anybody that's been on the ServiceNow platform as long as we have knows it's constantly changing, right? And feedback is important because without it, we don't know what's being needed. So sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No. I was agree. It's deliberate customization must meet a very significant threshold that is honestly beyond value, because it continually will come back and be a part of every patch, every upgrade, all of this piece. So, I love how you kind of do application extension when you need to, the bolt-on approach where needed, and then really, really try to socialize. If you align to out of the box processes as they are, you get automatic regression testing through built-in free ATFs. So every upgrade is a little smoother. But we do have a question to get to. This will be our last question based on the timing. Then we've got some closing statements from everybody on the panel. So Jerry Wong asks, have you had any experience where we're focusing out of the box and the stakeholders want to customize to bend that platform to their own process? And, I'll just kind of open with you. You hear the chuckles, and that's because it's only every meeting that this happens. So
we just discussed this.
We kind of just touched on it, but I'd like to dive into some of the actual tangible how-tos. So, I'll kind of start with a few high-level things that I like to do. The first thing is I'll look to come and showcase them how to deliver those outcomes with the out of the box framework, and then come up with a training timeline and a plan. And I can guarantee it's always faster to train than it is to build and train. So the timeline piece of that makes it a little more attractive. You can train people out. We define the process, implement foundational data, train people, and you're in production, versus 2 weeks of workshops, 2 weeks of design, 2 months of build, testing, fix all the bugs, and 6 months later we're going live. Sometimes that's the only way. ServiceNow does kind of cast a great wide net, but it doesn't catch all the fish that we need. So how do you guys handle that?
So again, like we touched on this some time back, I always sit down with my customer and try to reimagine their process. See, if we are getting a customer on the ServiceNow platform, we need to understand their process, but at the same time, as trusted advisors, we should make them understand that here are these processes which, if you will fit your processes in this, it would work better. Like we always sing that better together song always, right? So we need to make the clients understand that these are the processes ServiceNow has already worked with industry experts and then made these processes. So why don't you come take a look with us, do some demos, let us do some POCs, and then if something is left out, which is not covered, we have this governance. So let us see whether it is value or whether it is dollars, and then we'll take and we don't hate. I mean, I know customization is a bad word for a lot of people, but if it is driving value, definitely let's do that. But
Definitely. Yeah. Configuration versus customization is not a discussion I entertain.
mhm,
It is about
exactly.
delivering the outcome in the most valuable manner possible, while also still maintaining that budget and timeline, considering all of the external factors, because it's not just how much it costs to implement, it's how much it costs to upgrade, maintain, enhance, build upon, etc. Josh, it looked like you were.
Yeah, no, I agree with that a lot actually. The thing that always gets me, and I don't know if this is a particular situation that Jerry's kind of outlining, but a lot of times customers come with requirements when they're actually do this in the tool, right? I would define a requirement as what business problem are you trying to solve? What is the outcome that you're trying to get out of this, right? ServiceNow has a lot of ways to get you what you're looking for. We just need to know what it is. Because if you're trying to flex and bend this, right, there's nothing worse than me getting in my, kind of earlier implementing days, put these fields on this form. Like,
Yeah.
But what are you trying to do here? Like, you always have to have that first question. What business problem we're trying to solve? What is the outcome that you're trying to get at, right? And I'd say 8 times out of 10, that allows us to really understand in the platform what needs to happen to get to those business outcomes, right? So that's where I always
Definitely.
start.
Rob, from the client
Right.
side of things, sorry,
Right,
yeah,
right.
Rob,
Yeah,
how do you
absolutely.
handle
I'd say
that?
it always one of the most difficult things here is to sometimes change your paradigm. You come in and you say, I know how I want my process to work. We have certain terms, we have certain ways of thinking about it, everything like that. Now let's try to implement it into ServiceNow. And you find that ServiceNow does the same thing, but it just works differently. The paradigm is different. The terminology is different. And so when you first start trying to map your process in and say, well, I want to do it, many times ServiceNow just looks weird. It just looks like it makes no sense. So you have to spend the time not only trying to understand what your goals are, but then you have to say, well, how does ServiceNow, what is the intended process behind ServiceNow? And that's something I'd say ServiceNow doesn't really tend to document all that well. They have, here's the form in the fields and this sort of thing, but they don't say, and here's the intended usage.
Yes, that's
So you
very
kind of
true.
have to reverse engineer that and then say, can we live with that intended usage?
Yeah.
And then move forward. And that's a very hard step to do.
That is, yeah. We all want to swim with the current.
Right. So
Yeah.
and so it's the bringing together really the way that the client side paradigm really is and then try to understand the way that ServiceNow's paradigm is, and then how do you merge the two together with the minimum amount of effort to change ServiceNow.
Excellent. No, I appreciate that. Okay, so we are at time. So, Abhishek, let's just go through a quick closing statement if you wanted to, and then we'll
No,
move
for
over to
me,
Rob and
the
go to
quick
Josh.
closing statement is it's faster to train than to build and train. I learned something.
I love
it. I love that. I'm going to use it a lot.
Oh, that's trademarked. So licensing, we'll have the licensing discussion after that.
We'll have that discussion.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
I'll come back to, again, customization. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Really spend the time, just like I was saying, to try to understand the paradigm of how ServiceNow is intended to work before you try to customize it.
That's right. Yeah, we want to swim with the current, be the salmon on the way to the ocean, not the way back. That's where you get eaten by the bears. Josh, welcome again. Thank you for spending your first CMA panel with us today on HRSD. Go ahead.
Yeah, two things. First and foremost, understand the capabilities that are available within the platform, right? You understand, ask questions, review. Now Create has a lot of good stuff as well, right? So just understand before you start to try and build. And then on the second side of that is understand what the outcome and the business problem you're trying to solve before you start solutioning.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. Again, my name is Chris Hsu. Thanks again for being a part of it. I did get a WhatsApp question. Why did I wear black today? So this t-shirt was the top of the pile, Kathy. So that's why. It's clean though. All right. Thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate your time joining with us. Look forward to the next one coming up in February. We will hopefully have some of the other new CMAs as well, but there's always room for Abhishek and Rob to join in. Appreciate it.